On today's show, we are talking with Mike Medici, a scout for the Texas Rangers, and we are talking player evaluation.
Welcome to another episode of the Baseball Awakening Podcast, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered, unsexy side of player development. Get ready for some knowledge bombs with your host, Geoff Rottmayer.
Welcome to the Baseball Awakening Podcast. I'm Geoff Rottmayer, and today we are sitting here with Mike Medici, a scout for the Texas Rangers. We've had Mike on the show before, and it was one of our highest download shows, so we decided to bring him back on and continue to talk more about player evaluation. Mike, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good, Geoff. How are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome back. As I mentioned into the intro, our last conversation did really well, and so I'm glad to have you back on. And let's talk a little bit more in depth on some stuff.
Awesome. Sounds good. Hopefully we can kind of top the first one.
Let's talk more on the hitting and the pitching side of things. Starting with the pitching side. You and I were just talking before I hit the record button about injuries. So pitchers with injuries, what are your guys' thought process on that, and decide whether or not you want to take a risk on a guy?
Injury, it plays a big part. Let's just say probably the most popular one that everybody hears about is Tommy John. So when we're looking at a guy that's had Tommy John, they usually have, and there's exceptions to all rules, about a 10-year shelf life. So let's say the guy blew out at 15. Okay, so now he comes back 16, 17, and he's pitching into his late 20s, and usually you see some kind of decline from there. It's depending on how they rehab, it's gonna come out better. It should be better. Hopefully get the feel back. Everything's on the up and up, but at some point, it's a surgery. It's a tied ligament. There's a shelf life with that, so we do look at when it happened, and it'll be interesting in time with all the weighted balls and all these kids doing some of these programs at such a young age. And if you're seeing kids blow out younger and younger, what's it do to their longevity, especially, being a pitcher? And you don't always see it like in the big leagues, but let's say there's somebody that had success in the big leagues. And since I do a lot of stuff in AAA, all of a sudden there's a guy that I saw that was electric at one time, in the big leagues. And all of a sudden now he's in AAA and he's 86, 89, touch and feel. And it's like, you start to think, man, what happened? This guy had an electric arm. And I do think it's that guys that have surgery early on, at some point, your stuff starts to kind of back up. But for us, it's a lot of, we have to know what are the injuries. If it's a shoulder, if it's a labrum, those are huge red flags. I'd prefer somebody blow a ligament every day of the week than ever blow, whether it's a rotator or a labrum. I don't have the answer to why labrum guys just do not come back from the shoulder injuries. Anyone that's ever had a labrum, very rare comes back and gets to where they were previously to having that surgery. It's a lot of just knowing what it is. And is it something that is going to be a problem down the road? I think back issues is a big one, especially if you're talking pitching. It's amazing how much you need your back. And, again, what is it? Because if it's something that's going to be nagging and the doctor says, this is something this player is going to have to deal with or really have to monitor day in and day out, we may pass. And it's just a matter of what is the risk. When you have all these levels of the minor leagues, allow guys to develop, we're okay with taking on some risks, but it's really just comes down to what are they? And like in the draft room, we'll have little like tags and, say like red means medical. That's a medical risk. So maybe if we like the evaluation in one spot, that risk grade is going to lower him a little bit. we want to kind of mitigate that a little bit on our end.
Interesting. So, now you're kind of hoping guys would be honest about their history record whenever, especially a guy who's getting drafted. How do you guys work with that? Because I can see a kid saying, "Oh yeah, mom never hurts," and then, surely he had something comes up down the road.
Oh, it's you have to do some investigating as a scout, and you really got to pay attention. Like I can give you a couple examples. I won't drop any names.
Sure.
But there was a player, I want to say it was 5 years ago, swore up and down, "I'm good, I'm healthy." And I saw one of his last starts. The first inning, he was 90, 94. And then the second inning, he was 80, 82, which is a clear indication that that ligament's done. Anytime you see a huge drop in velocity really fast like that, it's evident that something's up. And he swore up and down, and we didn't take him. Another team took him, and in his first bullpen, he said, "Oh, my elbow hurts," and he ended up having Tommy John right after. And because kids I hate to say it, but they know, like, hey, this is my ticket. This is a chance to, get drafted, make some money. And in Major League Baseball, we don't have a combine like football, where it's a central area where all the medical documents go in. You can bring guys in, you can test them. So what we have is MLB has their top 200 list, which is compiled. I think every team submits names, and they kind of come up with their top 200. They think they're the top 200 guys in the draft. And all those guys need to go get drug tested. And if you're a pitcher, you have to have an MRI. Now, nobody ever turns down the drug test. And even if they test positive, honestly, it doesn't mean anything. We get told, hey, it was a positive test for whatever. Then we can kind of decide if, we're okay with it or if we're going to pass. Guys do not have to take the MRI. And last year, there was a player in my area that elected not to. He still went in the first round, but it's almost like you start to wonder, is he hiding something?
Yeah.
Why is he electing not to? And part of it's on the clubs, because what happens is these guys take the MRI, and then the team turns around and says, well, we're not comfortable with the medical. So let's say if you get taken with the 10th pick in the draft, and that's a $2 million slot, recommended slot for that pick, and a team now looks at the medical and says, I don't feel comfortable with the medical, they only have to offer you 30% of that slot. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. And so now all of a sudden you're $2 million. I can't do all that math in my head, but now it's, that's substantially different.
Yeah.
And that player can go get multiple opinions from other doctors, but if that team doctor says no, that's what the team's going to stand by. So now you're kind of, it's just, there's a lot of gray area. So that, I get why players don't want to do the MRI.
Yeah.
But that's why from a scouting standpoint, like to me, you have to go, if there's a player you're in on, you have to see them a lot late, especially if it's a pitcher. If we were considering somebody in the first round, pretty much you're glued to him the rest of the way. And we want to see what the market is too. We want to make sure he's healthy up until the end. That's why we cover, the college regional.
Yeah.
It's not to scout players. It's honestly, we're basically sitting there to make sure nobody gets hurt. And if somebody does get hurt, that we can phone it in really quick and say, hey, I know we like so-and-so, he just walked off the mound. Sean Manaea was an example of that. In the conference tournament, he walked off the mound. He did not even, I don't even think Sean threw a pitch in the first inning. There had to be, I bet you there's 40 or 50 guys there, because he was projected to go in like top 10 picks, and he walked off the mound, and nobody really knew what it was. We just knew he walked off.
Yeah.
And he ended up needing a hip labor. That's what it was.
Wow.
And Royals took him, I think, at 30, overpaid him, and obviously in the big leagues now, and he's healthy.
Yeah.
But that's why you're there.
So when you're looking, you mentioned a couple indications. One being the velocity drop, and then the other one, guys walking off. What when you're watching a guy, especially a pitcher, we're talking about pitchers right now. What are some things that would stand out? Like, I mean, is the movement going to be different? I mean, what are things that really stand out other than, the velocity and the walking off?
Velocity is the top indicator. If they stop throwing, like if that ligament's not intact, they're gonna baby their secondary a little bit. They're not gonna kind of not show it to you nearly as much. They might just flip one in, but they're not gonna throw it because it's gonna kill their elbow.
Yeah.
The other one's just the overall feel and command. Like if command starts going array, and all of a sudden you got a guy that for the most part's been in the zone, and now he just can't find it. Something's going on. But if that elbow does pop, I don't know if I've ever seen it where an elbow's popped and a pitcher stayed in. If he did stay in, he stayed in for one more pitch.
Yeah.
And then he knew it. They usually, when I talk to players and I ask them, because it's amazing when they know, they can tell you the day it happened, the situation, and they take me right through it because it's, for them, they think of it's career impacting,
Right.
And they're like, yeah, I threw a pitch, felt it go. I thought I could stay in. I threw one more, most pain I've ever felt before, and I walked off the mound. But yeah, when it goes, it goes. But yes, you can pitch on a partially torn ligament for a long time. And, that's where I drafted a player 2 years ago. This kid's never missed an inning in three years of college. And we took him in his elbow. He needed Tommy John.
Wow.
And then when I talked to him, he's like, yeah, I can't straighten my elbow out. I'm like, and you've been pitching for how long? He's like, and it's weird. Sometimes it gets misdiagnosed. Sometimes guys just can pitch through it. And for him, it was one of those, he could probably pitch through it and will go at some point or just have it done. Ryan Baracchi, who I signed, pitches for the Blue Jays. He was that way. We signed him. It was a partially torn ligament. We were totally fine with it because we knew the makeup and the work ethic, and he would get himself back and he'd be fine. He had good stuff. And we let him pitch that fall, and he blew out shortly thereafter. I was like, okay, let's get the surgery. We'll get you back and get back on track.
That's interesting. Like you guys were all right with taking him knowing that was going to happen, which, I guess, in today's game, it's kind of a norm, but you also knew that he would put in the work to come back. So again, just an example of the makeup helping you and continuing your career if you get hurt.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. If you got a guy that's injury risk, to me, what's the makeup like, especially on the mound? One, it's a mental thing because you're going 12 to 16 months of rehab. And then when you come back, there's a lot of mental barriers. I just talked to a kid and he told me he had a setback, and his setback was simply, it was the mental side. Yeah. He couldn't let it go. He just needed to understand my arm is not going to pop. It is, the ligament's fully intact. I just need to pitch through this, because every kind of small pain they feel, they're going to say, oh, I'm shutting her down. Right. And so there's a lot of mental stuff you got to get through, but you need a guy that's going to work. Everybody says if you have Tommy John, you're going to come back bigger and stronger. As Dr. Andrews does it, he asked Ryan, how hard do you throw? And he said, the best fastball I ever had was 93. And he goes, you'll throw 96 when you come back, and he's thrown, I think he's been up to 97 or 98. Yeah. But it's all a testament to the work ethic. Yeah. If you bust your butt through the rehab process, you 100% will come back bigger and stronger. If you do not, you will come back the same or probably less because you haven't built it up to sustain once you're back.
Yeah, you would think, if one were to look at the training protocol for a guy going through Tommy John, it would make sense maybe to think that maybe this is a good way to train just in general.
Yeah. I mean, it's all laid out for you. It's scripted. It's just how much, when it comes to, you got to follow throwing stuff religiously, but it's all the stretching. Like, I don't know the entirety of it, but I know you got to keep stretching. You got to break up the scar tissue. You got to fight through some of the pain and discomfort, because it's the only way it's going to get better. And that's where guys have setbacks, because they feel a little pain and they say, oh, nope, shut her down. Like, no, you got to keep working through it.
Okay, cool. So let's jump over to the technology side of pitching evaluation. There's a ton of tech out there, and the technology can either help you or it can hurt you. What are your guys' thought process, and what are you looking for on the technology devices for the pitchers?
Yeah, we have a bunch of them. They're nice just because they're mobile, and you can kind of set them up in the bullpen and take them down, move them. The technology, I think, is great if it's used in the right way.
Right.
One, you can't just have Rapsodo and look at the numbers, because you need somebody to be able to break it down. You need some kind of bridge between the numbers and the baseball. Like, okay, this is what the numbers are telling me. This is where you need to improve. And I think that's a huge problem, is you have the data. Now, how do we interpret it so it can be more beneficial for the player?
Right.
And I think it's also bad when it's used too much, because now I call it chase the mistake. Well, I want to get this number up, so you're focusing on that. Well, something else gives.
Yeah.
I think it gives you so much data, like focus in on certain things that are applicable to the player. And don't use it too much.
Yeah.
We use it more as baseline. So you throw your bullpen or whatever, and all right, we got the data. All right, this is what we need to work on. This is some areas that we see we need to improve. Here's your program. Go to work. Come back in 3 weeks and let's do it again. So you have some kind of baseline.
Yeah.
So you always, and that's where I like it. That's how our guys use it. But I go to a lot of colleges where they tell me every bullpen is on the Rapsodo, and they're looking at the iPad and they're looking at the numbers, and then they're trying to create fixes, and it just gets jumbled a little bit. So I think it's definitely beneficial if it's used effectively, especially as a training tool.
Yeah, so when you got a guy that's 15, 16, 17, and the average, the numbers are just average, not really a prospect. He comes back at 18 and the numbers are significantly better, and you guys now have interest in him. What's the thought process on that guy? It seems obvious what he's doing, but I'm just curious as to what you guys think when you guys see a case like that.
Well, there's a couple different things. So, think about pitching. So a young kid, guys that make jumps, they're like, we call them, you're projecting on players. So maybe he made some additional strength gains. Maybe he made some tweaks in his delivery. Those are things that would stand out to me.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a lot of, if nothing against because I'm not a big guy, but if I was a pitcher, I'm 5'10", 185 pounds. If I had pitched in college, I would have been the same guy year in, year out. That's why you look for those guys that's why we look for the bigger ones. Big, long, lean, that, we can work with, we can build upon. So when you have, you have that baseline, and then they keep growing, they keep maturing, they keep working out, and they're starting to make those gains, and then you see a jump. That's what, to me, is what it would be telling me, is that, one, he's probably a worker, but there's room for improvement in there. There's some growth to be had.
What if it was the other way around? Let's say a guy did pretty good. This kid looked good. Maybe goes to the wrong school, and they don't have access to the information, and they're making some changes that they think it's going to help him, but it really isn't. So what is that? What does that tell you guys?
Yeah, it's just understanding what were the changes that were made. When you start seeing a guy regress, like, all right, well, what happened? Because if it's a college, if it was a player in high school that I liked, and he went somewhere, and all of a sudden he starts going backwards, doesn't mean I necessarily don't like him anymore. Whenever he become eligible for the draft that junior year, I would, because we get a chance to meet with these kids, I'd meet with them and just say, hey, what's going on? Why are we going backwards? Is it just not putting the work in? Is it And they may be, usually if you know them, they're pretty transparent with you as far as, they really tried to tweak my delivery. They tried to do this. Unfortunately, it's not working for me. Some kids are, sometimes too coachable, and they everybody wants to put their stamp on guys, and they'll just, if they were good in one way, they go there, and then, because I've seen it. There was a kid a few years ago. He went to one school, which I thought was I call it cookie cutter school, where everybody kind of does it the same way. And he had a good delivery, and they changed him, and it didn't work for him. And all of a sudden, his stuff started to back up. Well, he transferred back, and it took him a couple of years, but now he's back on track. But that happens.
Man, it's a 2-year step back, huh? A couple years step back on that.
It is. It ended up with, because, so depending on what you change, so if a kid's been thrown a certain way for so long and you start to change that, now you're depending on what the change is, if it's drastic, which in this case, this place was usually pretty drastic changes, all of a sudden, something goes, now the arm's barking a little bit, now it's an injury. Now it's all right. Now you got to shut down. Going back to injuries, that's the problem in baseball, is that, we try to do our best to keep guys on the field. Every time there's an injury in baseball, especially when it comes to pitching, it's never, a start or two.
Yeah.
Last year, Ryan pitching for the Jays, he missed opening day. He told me he's going to miss 1 or 2 starts. He missed like 3 months. It's never, it's always long term. And that's why it's so important to keep these guys healthy. So when it comes to making adjustments, they have to be subtle. Anytime they're extreme, always something goes.
What, when you get it, going on the injury stuff, so you get this guy and you look at him and he says, okay, man, that arm path, it's pretty problematic. What we've seen in the past, that's going to create a lot of injuries. But the kid's been injury free, getting guys out, doing well. What's that conversation like with you guys in-house, saying, we really like this kid, but that arm problem, the problem, but he hasn't that problem.
And it's there's an exception to every rule.
Yeah,
because there's like Max Scherzer, who's as good as they get, and he has every red flag you hear about. He lands open, so that means stress on the elbow. I think he strides across. I think he's across his body, which most guys would prefer you to be more in line. He's inverted. He's got a deeper path. I mean, every exception to the rules there, and we fight this. As a scout, when you see a guy that has these red flags, you got to start. This is where scouting is so important. What kind of athlete is he? He's a really good athlete. Those guys can get away with it. Non-athletes, it's more difficult because they don't necessarily are ever going to be able to really repeat with it when it comes to their secondary pitches. What is their flexibility? That's another big one, especially like arm, hips. I had Tanner Houck. He ended up going. I had him in high school. He went to Missouri. He was a first-round pick to the Red Sox, and he may be up at the big leagues this year. He was 6'6". He was just like Scherzer. He was open toe across his body, really deep, inverted elbow. You're like, no way, this guy's going to blow out. Hopefully everything stays like it is, and he's been fine. And the common theme with him, he had incredible flexibility, and he was a very good athlete.
Yeah.
So those were it, So when you find those guys that, all right, he doesn't necessarily do it the right way, and some of them might be injury prone. Those are the questions you got to kind of ask yourself, because those are the ones that get away with it. If you're an athlete, you get away with everything.
Yeah,
that's just the reality.
And that's something that the data can't tell you that. That's why, when they say scouting dying, no, it's not. No,
there's such a human element to scouting, and for me, the big one is the makeup. There's zero numbers that are ever going to be able to tell you, what makes a guy, what makes him go, what's his drive. Because, I go and sit across from these guys, and I flat out, you can ask them, and like the Max Scherzers, just talking about him, there's not a better competitor makeup guy that you would want on the mound than him. And you saw it in the playoffs. I remember when he bunted the ball and BP off his eye, and he had the black eye. And I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw him. no big deal. He'll start. I didn't even know. I was just like, there's no way that dude's not going to start tonight. And sure enough, he started because that's just him.
Yeah.
Like there's such a human feel to it. You know, we always talk about gut feel. You know, gut feel guy is somebody that, you know, maybe not huge tools, not big stuff, but the more you see him, you're just like, this guy's got it. You know, for me, one of the best gut feel guys I've ever had was Nick Solak, played at Louisville. You know, we got the trade for him. I think right at the deadline, we traded for him from Tampa. You know, and he was a huge gut feel. Every time I saw that kid play, he just hit. And he played hard. And he was gritty. And it wasn't huge tools. It wasn't, you know, anything really flashy. Just incredible makeup kid that worked extremely hard, loved to play the game, and constantly got it done in the big situations.
Yeah. So I got a question. So let's say got a kid, really good athlete, can play, but it just been brought up in the wrong environment. You know, the home situation's not ideal. And, you know, the question becomes, you know, if we get him out of this environment, will he be able to do well? You know, will he be able to overcome? You know, what's that conversation like within you guys on a kid like that?
Yeah, those are the most difficult ones. And I would say I get one every couple of years where it just has, unfortunately, a very tough home environment where, you know, whether the parents are separated or the parents aren't very involved, it really, really comes down to knowing the kid. And does the kid want it bad enough that he is going to, you know, work to create himself a better life than kind of what he had? And if it's a kid that just the home environment's that bad, we just won't let him go home. You know, we'll say, all right, go home or wherever, you know, go see family for Christmas or Thanksgiving. But for the most part, we'll just keep them at the complex. We'll put them up at our, you know, like at our complex, we have like apartment type housing. You know, we'll just keep them there and we'll keep them busy. You know, whether, you know, we have the Dominican complex as well. We can send them down to the DR over the winter because those guys are always playing, you know, and then once things kind of pick up here, we'll bring him back to Arizona and he'll go there. And once the season starts, he'll go off to the affiliate. But that's because there are situations where you know, let's just say I had a kid like that, you know, here in Indianapolis, I would say, like, listen, the kid's got the ability, you know, unfortunately he's surrounded by, you know, group of friends or family that just aren't good influences on. We can't let him go back to Indy. Got to keep him out of here. Let him go home for a short amount of time. And if he is home, let me know. So at least I can check in with him.
Yeah.
You know, that's another role of the area scout. You know, I always tell these kids, especially the high school players and their parents, like, I don't disappear. If you need anything, you pick up the phone and call. Yeah. And it's whether it's, you know, you're in A-ball, you're in AAA or in the big league, doesn't matter. You know, we're here. You know, if a player comes home in the off season, he needs something, just call. We'll get you taken care of.
Very cool. So let's jump over to the hitting side of player evaluation. So a kid can hit. So you got a kid that can hit, but he has the less than ideal swing. You know, there's so many swing theories out there, and some of them seem more problematic than others, but you know, there's some kids that can hit with it. So what's the thought process when a kid can hit and has a less than ideal swing?
What's funny is that of all the hitters I've had in my area over the 10 years I've been here, the ones that have played in the big leagues are not how you draw it up. They all just something different, you know. And what it comes down to is, you know, do they have bat the ball? Do they have a feel for the barrel? Can they manipulate it? Can they adjust the secondary pitches? You know, do they have plate coverage? And this is where in scouting, like, because we can only be in the ballpark so much. You know, if it's a hitter I like in the amateur world, I'll probably see him 10 to 15 times because you need a good sample size because everybody has bad days, everyone has good days.
Right.
So at least it can evens out a little bit. You get a feel for their approach, kind of what they're trying to do against different pitchers. But now there's just so much data out there. It's easy to back that up because, you know, we can go into, you know, there's a system we use and it flat out will tell you, you know, what the swing and miss rate is, what the batted ball in play is, you know, so now you have all this data that you can say, like, listen, I understand that it's not ideal how this guy does it, but it's incredible bat the ball. He's got bat speed. He's got power. Everything kind of lines up and shows you, you know, when you start to break down his approach and his ability to lay off pitches or stay with pitches in his zone. Still the best one I could ever think of is Hunter Pence. I mean, you go back, look at his video from Texas Arlington when he was in college. It's the same swing. Nothing's changed. It was just hideous. So you're thinking you're looking at a college kid. You're like, God, how is this swing ever going to work? But, you know, he's super athletic, very twitchy, electric bat speed, an incredible bat the ball. That's what he did. And that was before we have all this extra data. But I would imagine, I don't even know what he hit at Arlington. That was, I think, my first year. Or no, it was before I got into scouting. We used to just watch that as just an example. You know, and you're looking at it, and I would imagine he hit, and he was probably an anomaly. Guys just couldn't figure out. I don't know how, you know, and that's it. I don't know how he does it, but he always hits.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes how we explain it. But now it does help with the data, especially on the college players. It's like, here, I flat out prove, you know, his swing and miss rate's this, his batted balls is this, you know, and there's even more metrics. It goes much more in depth than that.
Yeah.
But it helps when you have that to kind of back up what you're saying. And it's good as a scout because every time I go, he hits, but then, you know, the numbers don't line up with that. So I can go back and look at, you know, other games that I'm not there. You know, maybe I'm seeing him against subpar competition. Maybe I need to line up a game where he's going to face somebody that's, you know, a little bit better of an arm. We see that with the smaller conferences. You know, you got to go on certain days sometimes.
Right.
You know, or you need to go see them down south, out the gate. You know, try to see them against some non-conference weekend opponents, you know, against guys that are going to throw the ball a little bit. You know, they're going to challenge them.
Yeah, and then you know, there's going to be more wiggle room for a guy who's 15. He can get away with, you know, not being able to do X, Y, Z just yet, than a guy who's 21 and can't do X, Y, Z, right?
Yeah, you know that. So in the amateur world, we have, you know, the summer circuits, what we call it. So all these top high school players in the country travel all over the place, and all these different tournaments played against each other all summer long. And they're heavily scouted. And partially it is because you're going to see all those hitters against the best arms the country has to offer. Now, this is just high school speaking. So, you know, if I have a high school player up here, like you go see him in high school, he should hit 500.
Yeah.
You know, but then we look at how did he do in the summer? Well, he really, really struggled, you know, and that it's not necessarily a red flag, but you do have to, you know, really dive into some of those at bats and be like, is the bat good enough to handle the better pitching? You know, if he plays in the summer and he fit in and he had great at bats and put the ball in play, all right, that's going to carry some weight.
What on the vision side of things, you know, what type of tests do you guys do to be able to see if a guy has the eye? You know, it's more than, you know, okay, can he see spin and stuff like that? But there are certain metrics. I talked to a guy. There's certain metrics that he says, yeah, this guy can see, and he's going to be able to play. So what kind of testing do you guys do?
You know, they don't do testing on vision, which is kind of crazy because it is important, and you'd be surprised. I bet you there's a lot of guys that they find have poor vision and don't realize it.
Yeah.
You know, there's some teams when they go and meet with players, they put them through the vision test just to see. There's a lot of teams that do a lot of different testing. You know, there's tap testing, which is reactionary. There's sight testing. You know, vision is one that I do think would be worth it. just because you hear it all the time. There's a player that gets in the minor leagues and he's struggling, and I said, let me just check your eyes. It's like, oh man, you need glasses. And then all of a sudden, the lights go on and he starts to hit. But no, there's really nothing that we do. One thing that I always look for is, swing and miss. I think that it either tells you it's just bad plate discipline, or how well they see the ball. So if you get a guy that swings and misses in the zone, if you swing and miss out of the zone, it's just bad plate discipline. If you swing and miss in the zone, or if you're missing breaking balls by 2 feet, there's something wrong. There's just, you lack pitch recognition. Whether you're not seeing the ball, there's some red flag there. We had a player, I think my second year, who swung and missed at breaking balls in the zone all the time. And the kid had a ton of talent. And that was, you almost want to overlook that, but it was the reality. He just swung and missed in the zone a lot. And sure enough, I don't think he got past A ball for someone that had a lot of tools.
Yeah.
And that was it. You can't, a red flag is a red flag. They're tough to ignore.
Can that be developed? Like, have you guys seen guys who had that? And obviously that example you just gave, he didn't, but can that be developed?
It can get better. It just, like I said, what is it? If it's a guy that chases, we can work on that.
Yeah.
It may never be great.
Sure.
It's that, then it goes back to understanding the player a little bit. Does he even care?
Yeah.
Like for us, Odor, he chases a lot. I don't think it matters. I think that's just kind of the type of player he is. He's going to chase. And then if you talk to another player and maybe they just don't have a very good approach, or maybe they don't understand approach, maybe they need to, know what that pitcher, have a better plan when they go to the plate. So there's things that can be improved upon. Is it ever going to go from, strikeout machine to, all of a sudden he's 1-1 strikeouts to loss, or 2-1? No, most likely not. But I do think it can be improved upon. Just when you see a guy that's a lot of swing and miss in the zone, that's a tough one to get past.
Have you seen maybe a guy who does that, but it's because of the swing?
Usually, I wouldn't say the swing. Are you saying so? If just like swinging and missing in the zone? Yeah.
Like the swing just off. Like, have you seen that? Like hey, maybe improve the swing a little bit, and then that improves, or no?
It depends. If you're just getting beat with fastballs, and I believe there's enough bat speed to handle it, then it might be the swing.
Yeah.
Because you see guys, they'll just get beat with good fastballs.
Yeah.
And they just need to make maybe a slight adjustment to allow them to get there on time. And it could be a timing thing. Maybe their timing's off. Then it comes down to, again, just knowing the player.
Yeah.
Can we improve upon that? Does he have enough feel? Some guys, I prefer a feel hitter.
Yeah.
Guys that can feel change. Those guys can be improved upon. Yeah. The big one, anytime there's anything that spins, we call it TWT, trouble with twisters.
Yeah.
If you see anything that spins and they're just missing consistently, and there's usually, I get one every couple of years where it's very blatant, and it's just because it's never gonna, as you move up, the pitching gets better, and once they find the weakness, they will continually expose it until you prove that you can hit it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily get easier.
Right. So, what the thought process with when you watch a guy, one guy's very smooth, very effortless, and another guy just swinging out of his shoe, but he can hit. Well, what the thought process there?
It really comes down to, what I would ask and I'd want to know is, what is their plan? Is there an approach? Is there anything?
Yeah.
Some guys are just super talented. They don't care. Like Javi Baez was a special talent when he came through, but it was one swing, and it was one swing no matter what the count was. But he could impact the ball and leave the yard at any point in time. And I do think it's kind of gotten better over time. Those guys that are just uber talented, they just, hey, I'm just going to run with this. But it really comes down to what's their approach, what's their plan, what are they trying to do? When they step into the box, what are they thinking? If it's one thing only, trying to impact the ball, putting everything into it, it's not gonna. You're not gonna have a guy that's gonna hit for average. You might run into some balls and leave the yard, but he's not gonna give you as much as you'd like. He's gonna swing and miss. He's gonna strike out. He's gonna give away at bats. That's a approach is big to understand with amateurs and even guys in the low level minor leagues.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell when you see a guy with a plan at the plate, you can tell because he's most likely going to hit. When the Latin players come over here, they pretty much all they know is swing, and it's kind of working backwards, like learning to take, learning to work counts and understand what pitchers are trying to do to you. When you talk to a minor league hitter or a big league hitter, it's amazing the stuff that they can pick up on and what their thought process is that goes into those at bats. And they can tell you from pitcher to pitcher, because it's so hard to hit.
Yeah.
You need every edge, you can get.
Let's talk injuries on the hitting side. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, if there's any injury when it comes to hitting, the back is a big one. Because eventually you got to play defense too, and if you can't bend, it's really going to limit you. Sometimes you can maybe swing through a back injury, but you're going to be limited to a DH only. And it really comes down to just what is it? Is it something that right now we could take a rest and rehab it, we're going to be fine? Or is it something that's continually going to, pop up over, a player's career? And if that's the case, that's somebody we may not be as interested in, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because some we're just going to have to deal with.
Yeah, because you have the long season. The season's long. The season is hard. It's grinding, and you're going to play through a lot of injuries. So how do you guys determine, that whole side of things, knowing that they're going to play through injury? That's just a given, and how they're going to.
One of the things I've been doing more of when I talk to these guys, I just ask them about their kind of their process, because it's a long season and there's going to be nicks. There's going to be, sometimes you're not feeling great. I really think guys that have a process behind them as far as being diligent about their work, eating right, getting enough sleep, their focus is on them and taking care of themselves away from the field. There's going to be better longevity, to those guys. The ones that, maybe don't take care of themselves quite as good, like the nightlife, those guys are going to break down much sooner. And there's just so much now with all these fitness trackers and all these different gadgets, and some of these college guys use them. I applaud them when I see it. They tell me this, it keeps me accountable. That's why I use this. And it tells me like, hey, your recovery, and I think recovery is a big one.
Right.
And there's some new fitness trackers that, that's what it does. And it flat out tells you, like, you need more recovery. A couple of them told me that there's a band that they can wear when they pitch. Huh. So it tells how much exertion they have, and so then it comes back to all right, how much recovery do I need to get back to 100%? So it's, whether it's those trackers are perfect, it doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
It's keeping them accountable,
right.
And it's keeping them thinking like, what do I have to do to get myself back, so I can perform at a certain level.
Yeah, no, that's all a good point. What about social media? How does that play in, on the players then, and you evaluating players? How does the social media and how they portray themselves on there matter?
It does, because I think you get a glimpse of kind of who they are, who they surround themselves with. For me, it's sometimes not only necessarily what they're putting up, like who's saying what about them, who are they retweeting. It doesn't give you everything, but it'll give you kind of some small glimpses, and maybe it adds to the conversation when you meet with them. You can kind of tell their likes, dislikes. They all about just being a teammate, hanging out with the guys. Who do they follow? More and more guys kind of sometimes keep it private, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it does, I'll look and I'll Google their names. I'll look for interviews that they've given, whether it's an article written or maybe it's on YouTube, a post game, and just to hear them talk, kind of see, like you said, whether it's what somebody else is saying about them. But there's definitely things you can pick up from the social media side. Kids are getting smarter about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to get on kids a little sooner, especially if he's a pretty special talent, because by the time it's their draft year, they've been coached to clean it up, take down certain things.
Yeah.
I had a kid that he had some weird stuff up, and next thing you know, it was gone out of nowhere. So it tells you somebody got to him and said, "Hey, you're going to have to start deleting some of this stuff."
Yeah. So we're starting to see a lot of guys use the platform to get some attention. Have you seen that be beneficial, of getting on there, watching guys, and maybe getting interest in a guy?
It is. You know what? It is nice. Like the flat ground stuff. He retweets all everybody that basically sends anything to him. Some guys that I actually know in the Midwest. What is nice is if you hear a name, you can go on there. The guys always post, clips of bullpens or them pitching, so you kind of get a feel for what it looks like, or even hitting. Same thing. It's if you hear a name, you can usually find it or find some kind of video, that says, "Oh wow, all right, this is pretty good," or "It's just a name that I heard. Doesn't look like it's that interesting to me."
Yeah.
Back in the day, you hear a name, it's like, all right, you got to go. Well, at least now I can get behind a computer, do some digging. I can pull something up, just to see a player.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's plenty of times where, you hear about somebody's transferring in, and maybe I don't know anything about them. I can go on there and pull up some information. But it is amazing. It's really becoming a pretty good tool. And I do think a lot of front offices pay attention to it, especially if it's like an independent guy that's just trying to catch on. Because there's a lot of good players that play independent ball, just looking for a break. That maybe, a lot of teams don't focus on those leagues. They don't scout them.
Yeah.
And there's guys there that can help, that can be a part of your system and help somewhere. That's what's kind of been good for it.
So let me ask you this. There's going to be a couple people listening to this, and they're saying there's all these guys out there that, that throw that 100 miles an hour, and, they look good on their Twitter file or whatever. But not all of them are getting a chance. So can you kind of explain, what else there is to it? And again, that gets into the whole everything else. But you see it all the time. This guy throws 100, every team needs to pick him up. Why is nobody picking him up? So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a reason behind it. And it's usually they have a history of walks, history of command issues.
Yeah.
If you see somebody in a bullpen that's throwing 99, it happened last year. There's a guy up there throwing 99 in a bullpen. Watch where the ball's going.
Yeah.
Is it anywhere near the strike zone? And, the other thing is, and you see this a lot, guys in the bullpen are electric because there's no pressure.
Yeah.
Rocket fire, doesn't matter where it's going. You're just pulling down as hard as you can to check the gun. How does that play in a game? And if they're not throwing strikes at 99 in the bullpen, they're not going to do it in a game. So now what do they got to do? They got to pull back. In this kid's case, he pulled back and he was like 91, 93, and the strikes were still just fair. So, it really, just because somebody pulls down 100 or 98, 99, there still needs to be some kind of quality. And, that's one of my issues with some of the weighted ball training are you training to be, almost like a one trick guy, to be able to go in a bullpen and throw as hard as you can. And great, you put up a good number, but all right, where's your secondary? Where's your separator? Do you have a curveball? Do you have a slider? What's your command like? Can you execute? Is there quality to your pitches? Is there any effectiveness? If the fastball is hard and straight, it's going to get hit. I don't care how hard you throw.
Right.
So there's so much more that goes into it. For me, honestly, I look at the delivery, because if the delivery is really good, that tells me, okay, there's a chance that he's going to throw strikes, and there's a chance he could repeat with his secondary pitches. If his head's flying everywhere and the glove side's flying and he can't stabilize out front,
Yeah.
Telltale sign right there. He's not going to command anything.
Yeah.
And he's not going to repeat because you can't stabilize.
Yeah. So
you watch any of those hard. No, I was just say, watch any of those hard throwers in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Not one of them were all over the place.
Right.
I mean, for Garrett Cole, as hard as he throws, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Lift, go.
Right.
Head's pretty still, stays on line. I mean, so that he can repeat, he can command, and it's big stuff.
Yeah. So the the debate on the internet is velocity versus command, and they say velocity gets you drafted. Okay, that might be right. Command, now you got to be able to throw a certain speed. You can't be an 80-mile-an-hour guy and command and expect to get opportunities. So let's say you got the guy that's throwing really, really super hard, which is what depends on what platform you get on. That's what they're looking for. Everybody, hey, you gotta throw 100 to get there. You gotta throw 99. You gotta throw 98. And then you got some other platforms that say, well, you gotta command. So what's the blend? What's the middle ground? We got a guy who can throw harder and throw so I can get guys out. At the end of the day, their job to get guys out. That's the job of the pitcher.
I want to see quality.
Yeah.
When I scout the minor league, I want guys with quality. Not only we have this argument that yes, velocity we evaluate players. I almost want to take velocity out of the equation. What's I call it like effective velocity. If he throws 98, but he only can execute pitches with any quality at 92, that's what he throws is 92.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's like an epidemic. Everybody got to throw hard. You got to throw hard. And now with the weighted balls and the Twitter, you see everything. You got to throw hard.
Yeah.
But I would prefer movement and life over velocity any day.
Yeah.
And then you pair movement and velocity with command, you're going to dominate. Yeah. Absolutely dominate.
Yeah.
And a big part of it, let these kids develop naturally.
Yeah. At
14, you do not need to throw anything more than just a regular baseball. Not a lighter ball, not a heavier ball. And, because what's happening is they want these kids to throw harder sooner.
Yeah.
And when your body's not ready to do that and it's not mature enough to handle that weight, that's when the injuries start to happen. Any of these college guys that I've talked to this year that have blown out in high school, I asked them and they would tell me, yeah, I was, because they came up in that when everything, this weighted balls and velocity became the new trend.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I started throwing weighted balls. And hey, yeah, when I started doing that, my elbow started to drop. I started to fly open, and then eventually I blew out. Yeah. Shocker. I mean, that's the chain of events that happens.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you straight up, our draft in baseball, we devalue the pitchability guy, and it drives me absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
If you're a guy that's 88 to 91 and you can pitch to both sides of the plate and you have a breaking ball, you should be valued through the roof because, and especially if he's a guy that hasn't done all sorts of, whether it's the throwing the weighted balls, any of that. He goes out and he pitches. And to me, it's like refreshing. And I think when I talk to the kid and the families, it sounds refreshing because everybody else is, well, you're going to throw harder because that's the industry right now. I want you to throw harder. Well, he will throw harder. Just give him 2 years. He's 18.
Yeah.
Wait till he's 21 and then he's 91, 94 pitching to both sides of the plate with a breaking ball. And now he's untouchable. You can't even get him.
Yeah.
In a trade.
Yeah. It's tricky because these kids don't know what to believe. They're getting hammered with information everywhere they turn. They get on social media, they see all this stuff, and they don't really know what it is. They just, hey, I gotta throw hard. So I'm gonna pick up a ball that's heavy and chunk it.
Yeah, that's what's out there. In defensive drive line, there's so much more that goes into it than just weighted balls. They do a ton of stuff with like biomechanics, being efficient with your arm. They do a lot of good stuff too. I just, that's what everybody knows is kind of like, all right, what do I have to do to throw harder? And there's definitely some positives to it. I think it does clean up your arm path a little bit. I just don't think going 100% all in without somebody that's pretty well versed in administering those workouts, like, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't watch a YouTube video and say, all right, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Let's rocket fire. You're going to get hurt.
Right. Yep. Man. It's already been an hour. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to kind of touch on a little bit? I mean, I can go on all day long, but I want to try to respect your time.
No, it's I enjoy doing. I enjoy just talking the game, and people understand. Like, yes, you see, like we just talked about, you see what's going on, what's like the hot trends, what's out there, but don't kind of fall into that trap. Stay the course, respect the process. Like, you will get there at some point. If there's a 17-year-old kid that's 6'2", 6'3", 170 pounds, he doesn't need to be doing anything out of the ordinary. Just stay the course. And that it's so hard because it's like, well, I was told I got to throw hard. You will. I promise you will. Stay the course. And the only other thing I thought about was, we touched on it, was the makeup side. Because I am such a proponent to that. I take it incredibly seriously. I've done 62 player meetings in the last 2 months, where I sit down one-on-one with the guy, and, some are good, some are okay, some are just there. But what it does is it really you get to see, what makes guys tick, what's their process, what are they trying to achieve. And you get to learn a little bit about them, because I think so much of that goes into, one, knowing the player, but also even the evaluation, because your ability will get you to a certain point, but your character and makeup will get you light years beyond that.
Yeah.
And that's those guys, I call them overachievers. I'm not saying they weren't good enough to make it, but like Nick Solak's case, to me, he's an overachiever, because he didn't have the great big tools, but he had incredible makeup and was so diligent about what he did. And he, you could say he overachieved, because in our game, we pay for tools. In the draft, we pay for stuff. We want big stuff. We want big tools.
Yeah.
But the makeup, you cannot lose sight of that.
Yeah, when I think about it, if I'm a young kid, even when I was going through my playing days, I think the huge disconnect is we don't really understand or really know, and even I talk to coaches now that don't even know what the evaluation process really looked like. And I think if more guys understood that we could see a different trend. Yeah,
because there's just not much. There's really not much out there. Like we've talked before, there's really not. In the pro game, we really don't mess with you till your senior year of high school, where you're considered eligible in college, whether it's junior college or at a 4-year school.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much to me now that goes into the evaluation, whether it's the data, the makeup, just the tools. It would be, to people to understand that sooner so they can prepare.
Yeah.
Rather than it comes to that point and I thought I was doing what I was supposed to, and maybe you were, maybe you weren't. Yeah, just to better educate.
Yeah, this evaluation side of things has me super interested in trying to learn so that I can figure out how to help guys. And you have your scout school, scoutschool.org, which I highly recommend. I'm on it all the time. I've learned a lot. But you get into conversation with other coaches, and it's crazy that, some of these guys just don't understand what it takes to get a guy to another level. And you got all these guys at your hand, and you're not sure. It's kind of a scary thing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no handbook on it. I always joke with parents, if it's your second, you're a pro at it. If it's your first, you're going in, you're clueless. You're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's obviously everybody's goal is to play, whether it's mostly, college, and they should go play in college. It's special.
Yeah.
How do I go about that? How do I get out there? How do I get seen?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I don't want to take up too more of your time. Another great conversation. I learned something every time I talk to you, man.
I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun for me.